Okay, so like, picture this, right? A text message just pops up on your phone, and it's got the U.S. military's war plans. I mean, seriously. Sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But it happened. This is the deep dive, where we take the sources you send us and we like really dig into them.
Yeah, you guys sent us a pretty wild one this time. This article by Jeffrey Goldberg, it came out March 24th, 2025. And get this. The title is, "The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans."
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So basically today we're going to figure out how on earth this even happened, right? What information was actually in those texts and like the whole huge implications of this whole thing. You sent this article to us and man, we were hooked right away. It's such a crazy story. And like the more we dug into it, the crazier it got.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, like, this whole thing that went down in March of 2025, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It all started with Hamas invading southern Israel back in October 2023.
Uh,
And then you had the Houthis attacking ships in the Red Sea. So the new Trump administration, like, basically, they were ready to come in and take charge, you know? They thought the previous administration hadn't done enough.
Totally. And the article jumps right into this whole new political landscape with some big names. Jeffrey Goldberg, the journalist who got those accidental texts. Then there's Pete Hegseth, who was Secretary of Defense, Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor, Vice President J.D. Vance, and a bunch of other major players in the administration.
It all starts in this, like, super weird way, right? March 11th, Goldberg gets a connection request on Signal, and the account says it's Michael Waltz. But you gotta remember, the Trump administration and journalists, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing, you know? So Goldberg is immediately like, wait, is this real?
Yeah, the alarm bells start going off, right? But then 2 days later on March 13th, things get really wild. Goldberg gets added to this Signal group chat. And the name of the group is Houthi PC Small Group.
Houthi PC Small Group. That name itself tells you a lot. The PC most likely means Principals Committee, which is like the top national security officials. The first message in the group seems to be from Michael Waltz, and it lays out the plan. They want to create this group, right? This principals group, to figure out how they're going to deal with the Houthis over the next, like, 72 hours. And the plan is to have deputies handle all the little details. But the thing that's crazy is that they're doing all this, like, really important strategic planning on a regular messaging app.
It makes you wonder about, like, basic security protocols, right? I mean, Goldberg himself was blown away that they'd be talking about this kind of stuff on Signal. And then you see the other people in the group based on their Signal handles. You got May, pretty sure that's Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. Then J.D. Vance, the VP, TG, could be Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. And Scott B., probably Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, plus Pete Hegseth using his own name, and a bunch of others, like John Ratcliffe and Stephen Miller. He was using SM. Now, we should mention Goldberg figured out who some of these people were based on, his own knowledge and some educated guesses.
Right. And given how serious all this was, it makes sense that Goldberg's first thought was, is this some kind of disinformation campaign? I mean, it seemed too crazy to be true.
It really does.
Yeah.
So you've got this group formed in this super strange way. And the next day, March 14th, they start talking policy. Michael Waltz mentions that there's a statement of conclusions with taskings that should be in everyone's high-side inboxes. That's like their secure classified system. He also suggests they make a list of allies to notify.
But here's where things get interesting. The account that's supposedly J.D. Vance, he starts pushing back hard. Vance questions if the public even understands how urgent this is. He also points out that it kind of contradicts what the president's been saying about Europe. And then there's the big one. Vance is super worried about oil prices skyrocketing if they go through with this. And the article even confirms that Vance was actually in Michigan that day, just like the J.D. Vance account said.
That's super interesting. And it doesn't end there. Joe Kent chimes in and agrees, saying there's nothing time-sensitive forcing them to act right now.
So then Pete Hegseth, using his own account, he jumps in. He acknowledges what the VP is saying, but he's still all for taking action right away. He says they have to reopen the shipping lanes in the Red Sea and show everyone they're not messing around, especially after what he sees as the previous administration's weakness. Plus, there's always that risk of leaks or Israel deciding to just do their own thing. He clearly wanted to make a strong move.
And Michael Waltz adds to that, saying that the U.S. basically has to be the one to reopen those shipping lanes. Plus, they're trying to figure out how to get the Europeans to help pay for it all.
And that leads to this pretty blunt back and forth between J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth. They're talking about not wanting to bail Europe out again, and they're clearly frustrated with what they see as Europe freeloading. It really gives you a glimpse into how they view these alliances.
It does. So you've got all these strong opinions flying around in this group chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then SM, who's probably Stephen Miller, comes in and basically shuts down the debate. He says they need to make it crystal clear to Egypt and the Europeans what they're expected to do and what'll happen if they don't do it.
And that brings us to the part of this story that's just mind-blowing. The actual war plans getting shared. So it's March 15th, 11:44 a.m., and the Pete Hegseth account posts a message with the subject line, Team Update. Now, it's important to note that Goldberg doesn't actually quote this message in the article, because it's super sensitive. But he does say that it had all the operational details about the strikes they were planning on Yemen. We're talking targets, what weapons they were going to use, the whole sequence of the attack. This is the kind of information that, if the wrong people got their hands on it, it could have been a disaster.
It's crazy to think that they just throw this information around so casually. And get this, the first response to this team update with all these top secret details is from the J.D. Vance account. And it just says, I will say a prayer for victory.
The timeline in Hegseth's message said that the first explosions in Yemen were supposed to happen at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And you won't believe this, but Goldberg actually sat in his car waiting to see if it would really happen. And sure enough, around 1:55 p.m., reports of explosions in Sana'a start popping up all over social media.
That must have been a seriously surreal moment for him, seeing all this super secret information just casually shared and then actually watching it play out in real time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And then right after that, the Signal group just explodes with congratulations.
Like they were celebrating a football game or something.
Michael Waltz says it's an amazing job. John Ratcliffe chimes in with a good start. Then you have this whole flood of emojis, the fist, the American flag, fire emojis. Accounts that are probably Marco Rubio, Susie Wiles, and Steve Witkoff all jump in with praise, prayers, and even more emojis. Even TG comments with great work and effects. It really shows the disconnect between the seriousness of what just happened and the way they're talking about it.
It's kind of disturbing. The article also mentions that later on, they start discussing in the group how much damage they did, and they even talk about a death toll reported by Houthi sources, something like at least 53 people, but nobody could confirm that number. And to add to the craziness, Goldberg points out that Michael Waltz goes on ABC's This Week, that Sunday, and on the show, he's comparing these strikes to how the previous administration handled things. He even claims they took out multiple Houthi leaders.
So at this point, it finally hits Goldberg. This is actually happening. These people are really talking about this stuff on Signal, and he decides to leave the group. Normally, that would send a notification to everyone else, but apparently nobody noticed that he was even there or that he left.
Talk about a lack of basic security. So Goldberg does what any good journalist would do. He emails Waltz, Hegseth, and a few other officials. He even sends them direct messages on Signal, trying to get some kind of explanation for this whole mess.
And the official response they give is, well, pretty typical of how they handled this whole thing. Brian Hughes, the NSC spokesman, he confirms that the Signal group was real. He says they're reviewing how an inadvertent number was added, but he also claims there were no threats to troops or national security, which is kind of hard to believe given what they were talking about.
Definitely raises some red flags. Then you have William Martin, the spokesperson for VP Vance. He puts out a statement saying that Vance is fully aligned with the president and that whatever concerns he had were resolved in later conversations. But the Signal messages themselves clearly show that he disagreed with them at first.
This whole thing is just crazy. I mean, using an app like Signal, which isn't secure at all, to talk about a military operation and then accidentally adding a journalist to the group, it's unbelievable.
It is. And then there's the whole legal side of things. Some national security lawyers that Goldberg talked to for the article, they said this could be a violation of the Espionage Act because they were handling national defense information on a platform that wasn't proved. The government have these secure systems like SCIFs and special equipment, specifically for this kind of super classified stuff. Signal doesn't even come close. The fact that they might have been discussing these secrets outside of those secure environments is a huge problem.
Yeah, and you can't forget about the risk of their phones and accounts getting hacked. I mean, foreign intelligence agencies are always trying to get their hands on this kind of information.
And the irony is, this is the same Trump who was always going after Hillary Clinton for using a private email server when she was Secretary of State. He said it was a national security risk.
And there's another problem. The article mentions that the Waltz account had disappearing messages turned on in the Signal group. But there's a federal law that says you have to keep records of official government business. Jason R. Barron, who used to be a director at the National Archives, He said that using an app like Signal for official stuff and not saving those messages to government accounts is breaking the law. It makes you wonder what they were thinking.
And it's not like they didn't know the rules. Goldberg talked to some former government officials, and they said, yeah, sometimes they use Signal for basic, non-classified stuff, especially when they were traveling, but they would never use it to talk about anything sensitive or classified.
Right. And like the article says, leaking information means giving it to someone who's not authorized to have it, even if it was an accident. And that's exactly what happened here with Goldberg.
And get this. Hegseth himself actually said in the Signal group, while Goldberg was still in it, that they were currently clean on OPSC. OPSEC is Operations Security, which means keeping sensitive information safe. And he says that at the exact moment they're sharing all these attack details with a journalist. It's just mind-blowing.
So bottom line, this whole thing is a huge deal. They accidentally shared the U.S. military's war plans with a journalist on an app that's not secure at all. Not only that, but we also learned about some serious disagreements within the Trump administration about their strategy.
It's a shocking story with some potentially huge consequences. It really makes you think about how the government handles communication and whether our most important secrets are actually safe in this digital world.
What do you think about all this? What stood out to you the most? And what are your thoughts about using private messaging apps for national security stuff? Jump into the comments on The Other Opinion, that's our channel, and let us know your thoughts. We want to hear your other opinions on this whole crazy situation.
Definitely. Head over to The Other Opinion and join the conversation. And while you're there, hit that like button, share this with your friends, they won't believe this story, and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more deep dives like this one. This whole thing is a big wake-up call. It shows just how complicated and vulnerable our world is, especially now that everything's connected. And it makes you wonder what other unexpected consequences could be waiting for us, especially in situations where one mistake can have huge repercussions.
It's definitely something to think about. And one last thing, just so you know, we used AI to make this deep dive based on the information in the article. We tried our best to be accurate, but it's always a good idea to look at different sources too, because some of the stuff we talked about